Teresa, what a joy to be with you.
Morning.
Congratulations, first and foremost, because we were just hearing about this fabulous index. And there is, of course, where you're Chief Data and Analytics Officer of JPMorgan.
Thank you.
And JPMorgan is #1. And I'm sure this just happened overnight. You just last year, ChatGPT came on the scene and vroom, up you decided to start focusing on AI. That is not true. This is a long-term endeavor. How does one get to be so prioritizing the right thing at the right time in the way that JPMorgan did?
Well, thank you, and great to be here with everyone today. And first, I want to start by thanking the organizers of this conference and AI, the Evident Index. I think this is a great way to come together as practitioners to see what the best practices are and have this outside independent view of the benchmarking, which I think we're all finding very valuable. So in terms of our ranking, we're delighted to still be in the #1 position, but it certainly did not happen overnight. And I think there are a number of factors that went into this, and it's been many, many years in the making. I think it was referenced earlier in the conversation. One of the first factors that we have to give credit to is our CEO. Jamie, I think, was very early in the game of understanding what the potential transformative power of AI could be. And he very much views this as a commercial imperative for the firm. He thinks it's critical to the future success of the company. And that is kind of aligned with the appointment of my new job, which I've been in for about 6 months as CDAO. He really wanted to make sure that because this is such a strategic priority, that this was at the operating committee level and that it was somebody's full-time job. So there's been tons of work that have been done here by a lot of the colleagues in the room, as well as my partner, Lori Beer, who's the CIO. But she has a big portfolio to take care of, and so he really wanted somebody focused on this. And he wanted somebody, frankly, who had experience running businesses. So I am a JPMorgan lifer. I've spent my career at the firm in the investment bank. So I'm not a data scientist, and this wasn't necessarily the natural choice to pick me for the job. But I think what he really wanted was somebody who had kind of an understanding of how to take this great, promising technology and really use it to drive commercial impacts and impacts for our clients and communities. So
6 months in, where have been the immediate has there been any low-hanging fruit when it comes to commercialization of this product? Where have you seen the impact from a revenue perspective already?
Yep. So I would say low-hanging fruit is not as ripe as I think people would want, and I'm sure that the practitioners in this room understand that. We've been at this for quite a while. And I would say really maybe almost a decade and in earnest over the last 5 years. And as we reported at our Investor Day last year, we are on track this year to have over $1.5 billion of value delivered to the firm through AI. But that was not always the case. In the early years, it's not necessarily that you see the results immediately, and I think that's one of the other factors that's gone into our success, is the commitment to the investment. And not just investing in the latest technology, but all of the foundational pieces that you need, the data infrastructure, the cloud computing, the governance, the embedded governance components that make this all work as one ecosystem. All of that foundation has to be there to be successful. So we've definitely seen the inflection point in the last couple of years, and where we're seeing the value. I think, like a lot of efforts, we started probably focused more on the operational side and driving some of the efficiencies there. We've definitely seen those benefits. I think we've also seen a lot of benefit when it comes to risk management. So everything like in our consumer business, looking at fraud detection in our card businesses, or sanction screening, or even credit decisioning, that's one of the really big drivers of value. But I think the other interesting thing that we're starting to see now is, in addition to efficiency and potential cost avoidance, we're seeing revenue generating activity, and that's really encouraging. And that's coming from places like, being able to have more personalized recommendations to our clients in our card businesses, or being able to give better insights to our client coverage teams around client intelligence or next best actions and things like that. And so we're starting to see, all of those dimensions firing now. And I should say that all of that value to date for the firm has been delivered through business intelligence tools and more traditional AI methods like machine learning. So
not generative AI, basically.
We're very excited about generative AI, but not from generative AI as yet.
Do you see that being the next area of growth for you, or is there more to come before you start really leaning into that? I mean, obviously it comes from a customer perspective, I'm sure, but where else does generative AI become practical?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's like everything else. You want to choose the right tool for the job, right? So depending on what problem you're trying to solve, there are going to be different models that will be appropriate. On the generative AI side, we definitely see tremendous potential there, and we've been very, very focused this year on how we capitalize on that and take advantage of the technology. I would say a few things in terms of where we are and how we've thought about it. First and foremost, I think we kind of call the non-compromise piece of that equation is data. Our data is what we think is obviously the thing that is where the value lies, and protecting our data and our clients' data is paramount. And so one of the first things that we had to do when we're thinking about the technology and using these models is making sure that we have the right parameters established so that we make sure that the data is safeguarded, and that's something that we've focused quite a lot on. But I think the other thing is the great thing about this technology, which it's hard to believe is just coming on to the year anniversary, it seems like it's been here much longer and the pace has been incredible, is the fact that you can actually put it in the hands of business people. And I think that, above all else, has really unlocked the ability for people to really imagine how this can be used in their businesses. Like we have a lot of great partnerships with our machine learning and data science teams. They're embedded in our business units. And we expect business people to understand the technology. We expect our technologists to understand the businesses they're supporting. But I think being able to touch it and see what it can do and see it in more real time has really unlocked the creative potential in the firm. We have hundreds of use cases in progress at the moment, some of which are somewhat close to coming to fruition. But
Teresa, what's interesting is there lies the dichotomy. The people who see the opportunity, the excitement, and then the people who are fearful. What does it mean for them? What does it mean for their skill set? What does it mean for their jobs ultimately? How have you managed to have that conversation with your own talent base right now?
Absolutely. And I think that is a big consideration. This is technology that I think holds a lot of promise, but I think we would be disingenuous if we didn't look at what the risks are that go along with it, and there are some novel risks associated with the technology. I think the one most immediate probably for this room is what happens to the workforce, and is there a significant dislocation or redistribution of talent? Look, I think it's hard to say. I personally think this is a bit different than prior waves. I think a lot of people tend to use the analogy, well, technological innovation is normal and the industry will adjust. And I think financial services is very well positioned. We are always looking to use technology to drive efficiency and innovation and new products, and I think we've adapted quite well. I don't know what the scale will be or how different this will be, but what we are really working toward is we want our folks to understand the technology, to be familiar with it, to be trained on it, because I think that the fear of the unknown is what causes some of the anxiety. Our philosophy on this is that the technology doesn't replace the humans, it augments them and hopefully creates a much more fulfilling work experience. JPMorgan has experienced years of growth. I think we still see a lot of great opportunities across all of our business lines. And I think what we're seeing here is the ability to continue the growth without necessarily having to continue to grow headcount at the same pace that we have previously to support that. So it becomes a scaling factor and something that adds a bit more capacity and ideally, a little more room in your day for higher order thinking or client engagement, which hopefully, yields better results for everyone.
But as we went back to, this wasn't some overnight success. This took investment and forethought to be at the top of evidence index. How, therefore, did you align your talent, and how are you continuing to? How did you attract people to JPMorgan when there seems to be such a fierce competition for the best developers at the moment and the best AI talent out there?
Absolutely. I think, again, you have to go back a little bit in time because it's certainly not something that happened overnight. I would say if you look back even 5 years ago, it was very difficult to attract high-end, data science talent into a bank, right? Especially when you were competing with some of the big fintech type companies. And I think we did a lot of things that were very smart at the time. We brought in some super talented people. We created a lot of connections with academia. We did a lot of branding exercises. We did a lot of training programs. We had internships. We created the flywheel that really got people interested in and got the talent thinking about JPMorgan. And I think what slowly happened over time is people understand that you have incredibly interesting problems to solve. We touch just about every facet of banking and financial services. We have vast amounts of data, and we have the ability to invest. And so if that's your passion, like what better place to work than to come to a place where you can, perfect your craft and work in an environment that you're going to continue to be on the cutting edge. I think the other thing that has happened over time is we have a very vibrant community now of machine learning and people, data scientists, people that work on the engineering aspects. We have a world-class research team. You're going to hear from my partner Manuela later today. So we really do have a great community. We had a session actually at JPMorgan last week for our data science folks. There were 900 people from the firm who were together looking at the latest research, looking at what's happening out in the industry. So you've got this really good, community that I think it fuels the talent.
Where is that community? Is it all in the US? You're an international presence.
Our talent is spread internationally. So we have people in the US, we have people throughout Europe, we have people in India. So it is truly a global presence.
And that's interesting because it's certainly a lot on the technology show at Bloomberg, which I'm lucky enough to co-host. A lot of the hand-wringing is around China versus US. There's the UK having its AI summit and trying to put its name in the ring. Remember us, we've got incredible talent and rivals to OpenAI being built up in France. But ultimately, is the talent spread more broadly than that?
I think so. I don't think anybody is going to corner the market on talent in this space. I think you do see pockets of talent, particularly, where the academic bases are strong. But we see that proliferating now more globally. I think you do see countries and governments, and you see it as the reg policy is starting to come into the frame. There is a very keen desire to be competitive here, to be on the forefront, and I think you do see a lot more investment and governments promoting the talent, the research, the innovation to be able to be competitive in this space.
And then try and have that awkward balance of competition versus safety. Yes. And of course, you were just saying how much you have to focus on some of the unique risks that come with artificial intelligence. How have you even gone about thinking about that from a governance level? I'm sure it in some way comes from the top.
Yes, absolutely. So we've taken a very conservative approach, and I can say that we don't have any LLMs or generative AI in production at this moment. I think first and foremost, this is a new technology, and we want to make sure that we are safeguarding our data, our clients, our firm, our reputation. So we are going intentionally, thoughtfully, and conservatively. We want to do this in a responsible way that's safe and secure. And if that means a month or 6 months delay, so be it, because at the end of the day, we're in this obviously for the long game and to do it well. We've been engaged throughout with all of our control partners who've been with us every step of the way on the legal frameworks, which are evolving. Mm-hmm. You're working in an environment where the rules aren't written yet, and so you have to be very careful We're working with our compliance folks and our audit folks, and everybody has been along the journey. We're also very actively engaged with regulators and policymakers because, again, just as this is moving so fast for all of us, it's moving at the same speed for them. And frankly, I think we kind of outnumber them in terms of the resources that we're able to deploy. So I think it's a very healthy engagement at the moment that we're spending a lot of time with our regulatory counterparts to make sure that as we test and learn, we're sharing that with them and being transparent and hopefully being able to shape how we come up with policies that are sensible and are going to be have the right protections.
You said you're not in-house building large language models yourself, but I'm sure you're partnering with those that are and seeing how it can be deployed. How are you looking at partnerships? Are you looking at being diversified? I mean, we have all just come off the most extraordinary movie in the making that has been OpenAI, basically. And I think the one, maybe you call it a silver lining out of that, was everyone was like, oh, business continuity. Do I really want to be all in on one particular LLM? How are you thinking about diversification of partnerships in this environment?
Absolutely. I think when you operate at the scale that JPMorgan does, our philosophy is we never have sole providers on anything. And so it's very consistent with our models across the board. We're a multi-cloud shop. We will be a multi-model shop. And I think, as you look at the pace of what is being released almost on a weekly basis. I think, what have we had? ChatGPT Turbo, you've got Llama models, you've got infinite models. Like every week, there's something new. And so we want to make sure that we have access to the best models for the right problems, and that, that's the philosophy we'll use. And obviously, it takes time to get there and build into that. So, I think the name of the game is diversification. We're also involved with some of the open source models, which are getting to be a bit more, we're seeing improvements in the performance and the explainability, which is encouraging. So, and in terms of building models, that's not the focus at the moment. I wouldn't say never, but, I think as we all get experience here, more targeted models, whether they're trained on, what makes you competitively unique in terms of your data, will likely be the direction of travel. But for now, we want to get some wins on the board, so to speak, with the work that we've already done in the generative space.
You said you've got this really active community. Is that community sort of exciting to watch as they debate amongst themselves, open source versus closed source, as they debate acceleration versus safety?
One thing we have no shortage of is debate. It's been fascinating. I am not, as I said, a trained data scientist, and I am new to this space. So I've done a ton of reading and getting a lot of good treadmill time in looking at videos and YouTubes and what have you. My colleagues have been very generous in helping me get up the curve. All of these things have multiple dimensions to them, and I think that's what's great, because we do have people with different perspectives, and I think that's how you get to better outcomes. So we have no shortage of healthy conversation.
And so, Teresa, take us to your Thanksgiving table and how everyone was like, so this job you took on 6 months ago, tell us about it. I mean, you must be peppered with questions about artificial intelligence, and how have you, just from that perspective, got yourself in a position where you feel familiar or comfortable enough with the terminology, or is actually the art not being, and being the person that you have to say, sorry, what is it? And why is this relevant? And how are we making money?
Well, it's funny that you say that. So first of all, I have 2 daughters that are in their 20s, and the first reaction I always get is, they do know you can't work the remote, Mom, right? Like, so, they find it fascinating that this is my new job. I
can't work it either, and I talk about tech all day.
So I have definitely found that there's a ton of curiosity here. There's a lot of misinformation here, and I know myself. I used to run the security services business at JPMorgan, which, for those that don't know, it is a business that is very, very heavily operations and technology based and requires a tremendous amount of scale. So I was pretty up on technology and how to make things more efficient and what have you. I thought I knew a lot about AI, and it turns out I did not. But I knew the questions that I had coming in, like what makes generative AI different? Like how does this all work? Like just the basic questions that I think at this stage of the game, people are almost becoming afraid to ask because like the conversation is just so ubiquitous at this stage of the game that like I think people are feeling left behind. I find that if you just bring it down to the most basic elements, that is what's most helpful for people. And again, I think it's one of these spaces where there are some real questions that have yet to be answered. So I don't know that anybody is necessarily the expert on the direction of travel. I always get the question, where do you think we'll be in 5 years? Like, who could have imagined what would have happened in the last 12 months? Like, I would never...
The last 2 weeks.
I would never predict 5 years from now in this space, so...
Do you think ultimately, are you an optimist that in the next 5 years, things will be much more productive and efficient?
Yeah, I am a tremendous optimist in this space. And that's a lot for me because I am not somebody who typically buys into the tech hype. I think this is very, very different. And so I am definitely a convert here in terms of what the potential is. I think there's been a lot of technology where the promise has exceeded what it can actually deliver or the timeframes between when things will be actually realized. So, you know, do I think that there's a bright future for blockchain? I do. It's just something that just takes time to evolve. I think this is different. And I am very, very optimistic about the benefits that it can create for our firm, for our clients, and much more broadly. And I think, you know, what's exciting is that hopefully you now start to see in the coming, you know, months and years that you actually have the application of that promise, which I do think is closer than some other technologies have been.
Measurability is so hard, though. I mean, hats off to Evident to trying to find the data sources with which to be able to decide someone's got the right talent or someone's got the right R&D. How you gave us a number, I think was it 1.5 billion already, in terms of the actual money being brought in through AI. How are you going about finding the data sources to measure on that?
Yeah, we've been very disciplined on that because I think it's, you know, the old adage, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it type of a thing. And, you know, I have my predecessors to thank for being thoughtful in that respect. If anything, I think that number is probably very conservative. And I think herein lies one of the challenges of implementing AI in a financial institution. What you don't want to do is to squelch the creativity and the innovation and the idea generation. And nothing will throw a damper on that than if you ask somebody when they come with a great use case to tell you how many headcount that's going to save or what is it going to mean in this year's budget. Because that just, right, a lot of this times you're doing experimentation and it's unclear, and actually the outcome could be far in excess of even what you contemplated because, you know, you start the flywheel and you see better impacts. I think one of the things that so that number is definitely measuring very quantifiable economic impact and cost avoidance and things that has just a ton of rigor around justifying backing up the number. I think what we want to do is expand a little bit more onto almost something like the return on AI. So it can be more on the notion of this is a really important business metric, and this is where the metric is now, and we want to improve that metric. So maybe that's number of seconds on a call with a client. Maybe it's you know, time to resolve something, whatever the metric is that you know as a business person is driving value that should definitely relate into an economic outcome at some stage. You know, I think that's another measure of just looking at, I think you have to kind of multi-dimension. It's not as straightforward as your traditional investment, technology investment with an ROI attached to it. So I think it's a little bit more, there's a little more art to it at the moment.
What many, unfortunately, can measure is there's not so many people who look like you in charge of the AI parts of businesses right now. There's a lot of hand-wringing around lack of diversity and indeed bias that might be built into the system by lack of people of color, women who are helping build this and indeed lead this. Have you really been thoughtful about that from a talent perspective? I mean, it must feel something that you wear daily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have through my whole career, but again, I'm very fortunate. If you look at JPMorgan, the chief information officer and the CDAO are women, as are many lines of business represented by senior women in our firm. So it is something that we focus on every day. Because without that diversity, to the prior conversation about the healthy debate around the table, you have to have that range of diversity. We've got great women leaders who run our Machine Learning Center of Excellence, which is a large team of data scientists that solve problems with our businesses. We have Manuela's team on the research side. So we have some very powerful, smart women who are running big parts of our organization. And again, it's something that I think we have still room to grow. The diversity numbers in this space are not where I would like them to be, but I think that's also a function of female talent coming out of STEM, and that will take some time, but it is something we need to focus on.
Can't see it, can't be it. We can see you. Tell us a little bit about, therefore, you are an optimist over the next 5 years. What keeps you up at night, other than the remote control situation, and your daughters probably bombarding you with what they've just learned from Bard or OpenAI and ChatGPT. I'm interested as to what you feel you need to add to remain basically at the top of evidence index.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things. So I do think that the speed of innovation here is very fast. And I think, we will be watching closely the regulatory space, because I do think that you do have to have the right guardrails here. And I think one thing that would be a setback for all of us is if something, unexpected that was not good happened. I think that could potentially kind of scale back innovation in meaningful ways. So I think it is like really being thoughtful about how we do this in a way that makes sure that those things don't happen.
What would be not good, as in like a data leak or a feeling? What triggers you in that?
There's n number of, you look at these technologies and the potential for your data to be compromised, or, a cyber attack, or, just an inequitable outcome for a set of consumers or clients that you didn't intend. So I think all of those things are things that we focus on constantly. I also want to make sure that we are really focusing on the things that are going to add value.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at certainly the generative space and where we see some of the potential, it's in how you service your clients. It's in how you do technology. I mean, our firm spends $15 billion a year on technology. We have over 50,000 software engineers. If you could drive even a small amount of productivity through the technology there, that's meaningful. So, it's about making sure that we're staying safe and well controlled, and that we're also focusing on things that are really going to, add the impact that we hope to have.
So let's end on what keeps you, instead of what keeps you up at night, what gets you up in the morning? What is it that you're most looking forward to as your day unfolds?
Terrific. I think every day, so I was an unlikely candidate, but how cool is it to be able to come to work every day and do the thing, like get paid to do the thing that everyone's focused on? Like, it's incredible, right? And so it's just a tremendous, I'm having so much fun, and I'm learning so much. And so like that gets me out of bed every day. Like, you don't know, like this truly is a space where you don't know what, like as we saw in the last week, you don't know what's coming, like what's coming next, what new cool thing is going to happen. And so I just think that's so exciting. I think if you look at like even the potential and the advances we're seeing in the complexity of reasoning and logic and where these models are going to be able to go and the things that they're going to help us do, like I can't think of a more fun way to spend your day than to be part of that and work with such incredibly talented people in this space. So it's been great.
What's the last thing you you prompted and asked of a chatbot?
Oh dear. I do know. So I had to give a little talk at an award ceremony recently, and it quite an esoteric award ceremony, I will say. And I put the prompt in almost as a joke to see if it would come up with like the context of this thing. Perfect. I literally gave the exact speech that ChatGPT wrote, so it's fantastic in terms of time saving, way better than what I would have come up with. It was great.
Teresa, you are such a joy. Thank you so much. Of course, you know her as the Chief Data and Analytics Officer, so CDAO of JPMorgan, but We are pleased to know you as Teresa Heitsenrether. Thank you very much indeed for your time today and your expertise and your fun.
Thank you very much, everyone.